has suffered massive and irreparable damage.
You never know what has happened to him.
Had I not been sure of this, I would not have permitted him to live.
Where?
Father?
What happened?
I need help.
What is democracy? What is democracy?
Got something to do with young men killing each other.
When it comes my turn, will you want me to go?
For democracy, any man would give his only begotten son.
It is impossible for a decerebrated individual to experience pain, pleasure, memory, dreams, or thought of any kind. This young man will be as unfeeling, as unthinking as the dead until the day he joins them.
I don't know whether I'm alive and dreaming or dead and remembering.
How can you tell what's a dream and what's real when you can't even tell when you're awake and when you're asleep?
Where am I?
I can't remember anything. Can't tell if this is true or a dream. Deep down inside I feel the scream. This terrible silence stops in me. Now that the war is through with me, I'm waking
the
up
nominations will just roll in now. And they did for my dad. These past couple months have been tough. Like, I've gotten zero I didn't win an independent film award. I didn't win Gotham award. I wasn't nominated for anything else. Dad was just nominated for an Oscar. Last time I saw Ramin was 3 months ago when we shot the actors and actresses with my father, and I had just been nominated for a British Independent Film Award and a Gotham Award. Life was fucking great. I was riding high. My dad was also nominated for Gotham, but I felt like I could beat it.
Keeps on living.
I can't live like this. I can't. Please, no, I can't. I can't. Help me. Help me. Help me.
Cell phone up recorded, but then we're not sure what led up to the interaction at that moment between agents and the people that he appeared to be with. Right, he seems to be in the street, kind of waving a car through. Why? I don't really know. I think we have a picture of the man who was shot and killed. That is Alex Pretty. The man has been identified as an ICU nurse who was shot and killed. The mayor saying he did have a permit to carry that weapon, or at least a weapon. So that is the man who has now been identified by his name as Alex Pretty, who was deceased after this morning's shooting by Border Patrol there at 26th and Nicollet. And we do have available on Zoom right now Rob Doerr, the president of the Minnesota Gun Owners Law Center, to talk about use of force issues and his assessment of some of these cases that we have been following. Rob, thank you so much for joining us. This is now the third federal agent involved shooting in Minneapolis as a result of Operation Metro Surge. We have an injured January 7th. There is a man that ICE is trying to detain from Venezuela on January 14th.
Bring a wire between the two houses so you can telegraph to each other.
If you could first just, I know there's a lot of video circulating. It's hard to draw conclusions because we don't see what was happening 15 minutes before this or what was happening right in the middle of that huddle. But what are your impressions of this situation so far?
It's Morse code.
Yeah, initially I was kind of, I had a little bit of skepticism seeing the DHS's initial statement that they made, because they said that the person approached them with the firearm. They didn't say that the fire was drawn or that, threatened officers or anything like that.
Over and over again.
difficult to see what happened right in this second here, but we do see that the agent comes back with the firearm in his hand. That fire matches the firearm that was photographed by UHS, saying that it was Mr. Pretty's firearm, and then that's when you hear the shots fired.
Do you know, it's been often said that there really only has to be the fear. A police officer or an agent needs to fear for his life or the lives of his coworkers, the people with him. But what is the threshold? I don't know if you know that answer. What is the threshold, or, you know, where that's reasonable?
So it's reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm. So they have to have a reasonable, I mean, based off of the circumstances, what would another person in that situation perceive it? You can't have an unreasonable fear, but it has to be reasonable for the circumstances. And, you know, barring any more information, it seems like there's at least, it's questionable whether or not a person who has been disarmed was capable of producing that deadly fear for police officers.
Right. We're speaking with Rob Dorr, the president of the Minnesota Gun Owners Law Center. We just want to make sure that we're, you know, reminding people who you are, what you represent, and that you are also a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. So what are you thinking in terms of what the public needs to understand? Because I think there is an inclination to jump to conclusions. This is a very volatile time that we're living in, and videos are being shared the moment after something happens. And so what would you say in terms of investigating a situation like this? What does the public need to remember as all of this information is coming in so quickly?
Yeah, I think in the first 24 hours, the information we get isn't always the most accurate. I think initial reports was this man was a 51-year-old man. So things develop quickly, and so I think it's always good for people to absorb information, but keep it with a certain amount of skepticism. But then also, there are some things that are just objectively true that we can look at. Like for example, if he has a permit to carry, it's not unlawful to be carrying while you're exercising your First Amendment. You don't have to pick between which rights you exercise. It's not a crime to be near police officers. It's not a crime to be in a protest with a firearm. The crime comes when you actually, take that firearm and cause somebody to be in fear of death or great bodily harm, or otherwise threaten them. That's the crime. So I think there are things that are objectively true, but then also things that are open to interpretation, and those tend to develop, especially as time moves on after the first 24 hours.
And Robert, one of the questions I see, Keith, that keeps coming up, you just mentioned that it's not illegal for somebody to be armed to be near police officers, but is there a reasonable distance that protesters should be keeping from armed federal agents or any police officers in terms of a protest or somebody who is the reason they're there? What is that reason?
Yeah, there's not like a hard set number. Generally, wherever you're allowed to be, you're free to protest there. So that's generally sidewalks, public squares, things like that. You're not allowed to walk roadways during protesting. That is something that does happen commonly. So you have to be mindful of that. And then ultimately, the courts have held that the government does have the authority to declare an assembly unlawful, and you are required to disperse at that point.
Rob, what are your thoughts in terms of investigating matters like this? All three of these agent-involved shootings. Do you want to see state officials be part of that investigation as well?
Absolutely. I think that's really the only way that we could have any sort of reasonable comfort that there's transparency going on. I'm always hesitant when the government says that they're investigating themselves, because more often than not, they find that they did nothing wrong. So it's always better to have an extra set of eyes, to have somebody who's detached from the command structure, that doesn't have a vested interest in the particular person. When there's officer-involved shootings in Minnesota, it's not the agency that the officer worked for that does the investigation, it's the BCA. And prior to that, that used to be an outside agency that would conduct that investigation, because we value that transparency and that outside look to make sure that the officers' actions were objectively reasonable.
Yeah, one more question, Rob, before we let you go, and we may ask it for a little bit of time later today too, as more information comes in on this. But when you heard about this shooting this morning, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
So when I first heard about it, my first exposure to it was the DHS tweet that went out, and I opened up Twitter in the morning, and I was immediately skeptical. The DHS has certainly had a particular bias in their communications, so I have a natural skepticism towards it. But the words that they used caused me to have really great pause when they say that the man approached them with a firearm. My first reaction was, okay, how did you know? Did he have it exposed? Those key pieces of information were missing. And then they go on to really paint this narrative that he was prepared to massacre police officers. And as we saw the videos that come out, each video that comes out seems to challenge that narrative, which really just makes me it gives me, makes me sad that we don't really have a reliable narrator, and all of us are kind of left trying to piece it together from, what we can see objectively with our own eyes.
I agree there. Yeah, we're all kind of just watching every single piece of video in slow motion and drawing conclusions, and we still do need to gather all the information, but certainly a lot of people have a lot of questions about what went down there.
We just need to get, and these things take time, we need to get all the pieces of information, what was being said, those moments too. But Rob Dorr, the president of the Minnesota Gun Owners Law Center, thank you so much for joining us and just walking us through use of force issues and interpretations in situations like this.
Thank you for your time.
My pleasure, anytime.